Tonight I'm having an interview about one of our allies. So I'm going to be talking to an attorney and activist with Code Pink, and also a supporter of the show, Isha Krishna Swami. And we're going to discuss some happenings in Saudi Arabia with some pending some activists that are on death row. But I want to shift gears and talk about an issue that I haven't had a chance to talk about much. And that's why I'm bringing a guest on to really help me unpack the situation that's going on in Saudi Arabia. So I want to introduce you to the Benjamin Dixon Show. She's called in before, and she's a regular supporter and listener to the show. But she really has a strong concentration on this particular issue with Saudi Arabia. Isha Krishnaswamy. She's an activist for Code Pink. Isha, thank you so much for joining me. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing great, and I thank you again for taking the time to bring this issue to light. We're going to keep talking about it and sharing it as long as they allow us. But if you listen to any of the before, all of my conversations on Syria, Yemen, Saudi Arabia in the past, they're not really popular, and I can understand why, because we're in independent media. We can actually speak some truth about the issues, and I want to unpack the issue that's going on with three victims, three activists: Ali Mohammed al-Nimr and Dawood al-Marhoon. They have been sentenced to death over essentially protesting and participating in the Arab Spring from 2011, between 2011 and 2012. Give us a little more information on what they're charged with and the situation around their cases.
Okay, well, one thing we have to remember is the eastern province of Saudi Arabia is majority Shia, but the state religion in the country is Sunni. And so I'm not sure how much your audience knows about the difference between Sunni and Shia, but basically it's like Catholicism and Protestantism, I guess, for Christianity. And in Saudi Arabia, the Shia population is incredibly oppressed. I mean, if you read the textbooks coming out from the official government, they literally say Shias are heretics, equivalent to idol worshippers and devils. And so they are systematically barred from many professions. And it's kind of a chicken and the egg. And the Saudi government always sees the Shias as inherently untrustworthy and always aligned with Iran. And so, so naturally, because the Saudi government treats them so badly, in December of 2012, many Shia youth participated in an Arab Spring rally where they called for democracy and self-determination, and so during that time, not much happened. But then 2 months later, the Saudi government came back with the most brutal crackdown ever. They basically hunted down and arrested all the activists, like the main activists. And unfortunately for Ali Mohammed al-Nimr, he was only 16, but he drove his uncle to the protest, and his uncle was a prominent Shia cleric, and so he was a very influential man. And so because of that, they basically, literally, he was riding his bicycle home, and on February 14, 2012, I meant December 2011. I'm so sorry. They arrested him, and then they just disappeared him. Literally, his parents didn't know where he was. He just went to the pharmacy, and then he never came back home, and they didn't know where he was for 4 months. And during that time, he was tortured. It was just brutal. And they got him to confess to a lot of the fake crimes, and most of these crimes shouldn't even be crimes. The second activist is Dawood al-Marhoon. He went in for an eye surgery to the hospital, and then they nabbed him.
Wow.
And they actually told he was only 17 then. And they actually said, "We'll let you go if you were to spy on your friends for us." And he said, "No way in hell." And I mean, I'm paraphrasing, of course. He didn't say no way in hell. But And so then they just arrested him and to just make an example out of him. And the third one was the youngest, Abdullah al-Zaher, and he's only 15 at that time. And they literally like shot him and they like beat him up with like sticks. And again, he's also Shia, and they tortured all these three youths to get them to get a fake confession.
Mm-hmm.
And the list of the crimes are just ridiculous. Things like expressing disloyalty to the king, harboring a fugitive, which is allegedly his uncle,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote, joining a terrorist cell,
Wow.
participating in demonstrations against the king, using a mobile phone to incite demonstrations against the king. They also made up like a few like totally outlandish charges, like manufacturing weapons. Come on, like it's not like these 16-year-olds can like go manufacture like guns and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then like throwing a Molotov cocktail. I mean, and there's a video of the entire protest. So, you know, like the only ones who were throwing tear gas and cocktails were the police in Saudi Arabia. And so basically after being they were all tortured for months. And then they were like, Ali was brought to trial in December of 2012, and he was not given I'm sorry, December of 2013. I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
He was not given a lawyer, which he's entitled to,
Right.
and for the first day of the trial, but his family found a little blurb in the newspaper saying, "Oh, we're having a trial for a traitor," or something like that. And so his dad hired a lawyer and brought him over. And the lawyer was not allowed to, well, he was allowed to visit him in the prison, but they actually confiscated all his pens and books and things like that. And his lawyer was basically kind of muted. He couldn't bring witnesses on Ali's behalf or anything like that.
Let me jump in
And
there. Let me jump in there and ask a couple of questions, because I want to make sure our audience is getting somewhat of the severity of the situation. So not only have these, at the time, there were children, right? They're teenagers. Yes. Not only were they arrested during the Arab Spring, tortured, got confessions out of them, but in addition to it, no sense of due process of any type, and last but not least, they're all on death row. And if I'm understanding the situation correctly, there really is no specific time where these executions will occur. They could occur at any moment. Is that correct?
Correct. The Saudi authorities never announce executions beforehand. They usually, on the day of the execution, they drug the prisoner and drag them out. And actually, they do it in public square, where they just like literally, like, you can watch it on. There's some videos that show this, where they just chop off their heads. I mean, it's really gruesome. So one of the most gruesome things, one of the most saddest things, is that Ali was charged with a particular crime called hiraba, which is kind of like treason. And while the judge was like listing out his charges, he actually turned to his dad and asked him, "Dad, what does treason mean?"
Wow. I'm sorry. That's go ahead.
It's incredibly harsh. And so basically, and so then they actually, the judge like met, like basically it was a predetermined verdict coming from above. The prosecutor even pushed for the death row, and they sentenced all three of them to death by crucifixion. I kid you not, and beheading. I'm not sure which happens first, but it's terrible. They had the appeals in secret, and last year, they had the Supreme Court, the Saudi equivalent of the Supreme Court, confirmed the verdict. And the really ironic thing was that the day that they confirmed, the Supreme Court of Saudi Arabia confirmed the verdict, Saudi Arabia was named as the head of the Human Rights Council in the United Nations.
So let's talk about that, because that's the obvious elephant in the room, is this beyond cozy relationship, like not just allies, but almost a special treatment of an ally with the United States, and the ability of the United States to turn a blind eye to so many human rights violations, and not just human rights violations, but just Saudi Arabia's involvement in a lot. Let's just leave it there, in a lot. I see that there have been a lot of protests and a lot of appeals, rather, to the Obama administration, to leaders, to speak out on behalf of these three young men, because if Saudi Arabia has this special relationship with America, then surely they should listen to America. But tell me about the response that you and others have gotten from our leaders, and what, if anything, could they possibly do to stop these executions?
Okay, well, one thing is, last year, Mark Toner, who is the press secretary for the White House, for the State Department, was asked point blank about Ali's case,
Mm-hmm.
and and then they followed it up with, what about and Saudi Arabia is on the Human Rights Commission, and they're the head. What do you feel about it? And he just was clueless and said, we support Saudi Arabia being on the Human Rights Commission. And so far, I've contacted the State Department many times. I've contacted people, various sources. Like I've tried to contact the White House, everything, and we just get silent. I mean, we get empty words, a lot of empty words, but nothing but silence. Like there's nothing ever that they never speak out. Don't talk about it in negotiations. There's so many. We're selling Saudi Arabia weapons for their war in Yemen. We could say, hey,
you're not getting
I've
this
also
next
spoken
shipment. Yeah, you're not getting this next sale unless you release those three boys. But it seems like we don't have the political will on our side. And I want to put it into context, because it's not just, it's not just, I hate to say it like this, it's just not everyday people like you and me who's appealing. You even had Keith Ellison, who wrote a letter to John Kerry asking the U.S. to intervene. So it's like it's activists, it's attorneys, but you even have some other political leaders trying to get the United States to get involved, and nothing. Why? I mean, nothing.
Absolutely nothing. In the UK, it was different. Reprieve there contacted Jeremy Corbyn. He basically went out and in the middle of the parliament gave a public speech condemning David Cameron's relationship with Saudi Arabia. Even till this day, I believe Jeremy Corbyn is the reason why those three boys are alive. Because then the UK media put the impetus on David Cameron, and they asked him point blank, why are you doing this? Like, what's wrong with you? Literally, kind of like that. And so David Cameron was able to allegedly get some sort of concession from the Saudi government. And so, like, the UK foreign minister, which is equivalent to the Secretary of State in the US, Philip Hammond, he said that he negotiated something, and he's written letters saying that he doesn't think these three will be executed. And on January 2nd, when they had the mass executions, and 4 other of his friends were executed on that day, along with Ali's uncle, they spared these 3 kids. So I have to think that that the foreign governments negotiating something made a difference. And Ali's mother even believes that if Obama were to intervene, that would make a big, big difference, because Saudis and the U.S. are like best buddies.
But that's the thing. So let's talk about that a little bit more. And actually, you know what, we're probably gonna have to bring this to an end really quick, because time is running up. But even though we're like besties, right? They're clearly, Saudi Arabia is clearly doing whatever the hell they want, even when we ask, right? In Yemen, when we asked them not to destroy critical infrastructure, some bridges, so that we can stave off a humanitarian crisis, they bombed it. And when they didn't bomb it completely the first time, they circled back and bombed it out of existence, completely going contrary to what the United States even asked. And so I guess my thing is, even though we're in this relationship with Saudi Arabia, do you feel like that level of request will have some weight? And I know you've already kind of answered that question, but I guess my question really is, why would we expect them to respond on this when they've demonstrated so much willingness to do whatever the hell they want to do anyway?
Well, it's kind of actually, the Yemen thing is also related because they're exclusively bombing Shia areas and not Sunni areas. So it is kind of related to their fear of the Shias in general. But we have concessions we can offer. In November, a prince in LA ended up like getting arrested for raping somebody. He was out on bail the very next day. So like I said, and then in Lebanon, there was another prince who was arrested smuggling this Adderall kind of drug from ISIS. And so we have so many concessions that if we wanted to if America really cared about freedom and democracy, we would totally like exercise it. It's just that there's two issues. There's a really, really, really strong Saudi lobby. They spend, I kid you not, $4 billion every year lobbying our government.
Holy cow.
So,
shit.
Yeah. So anytime you hear like weird demonization of Iran, just know that that's like Saudi Arabia trying to point the attention away from whatever horrible thing they're doing.
I mean, I knew it was a lot, Isha. I knew it was a lot, but $4 billion a year?
Yeah, or total. I can't remember, but it's 4 billion with the Podesta group even.
Yeah,
and
we'll find that real quick. Go ahead.
And so they are like they own they have 750 million of US currency. So they have a big lobby and a lot of clout. But this case is so grotesque that I have a feeling that they can't resist the will of the people. These are just like the most grotesque cases because like these are literally children, and that this is such a small concession for them that I think just a little bit more political pressure from the American people would actually make a big difference. And another thing is that we, the American people, have a chance to prove that, hey, we actually want freedom and democracy for other people in the world. We just don't, like, we're not just for like bombing you guys and stealing your oil. Like, and so I think this is like a great opportunity to reach out and show that we don't approve of all the atrocities done in our name. And so, there is a big lobby, and they're very powerful. But like I said, the Yemen war is such much bigger of a thing than say these three cases, that it will make even Saudi Arabia look good. Like they can actually appeal to their vanity and say, hey, like they can talk to the king and say, hey, look, we can show how merciful and humane you are, and you're the head of the UN Human Rights Commission, so don't kill children.
You know, Isha, I want to thank you for coming on the show and bringing this to our attention.
Thank you so much.
And you were actually quoted in an article by one of my colleagues, Salam Morcos, over at the Progressive Army. And the title, I'm going to tweet it out now: "Why is the U.S. silent? Saudi Arabia to behead and crucify 3 innocent juveniles." I want everyone to go and read that piece. And I'm tweeting it out now. It's important that we do our part because it is an international community. It's not them and us. It's all of us. So Isha, thank you so much for joining us, and tell everyone.
Can I get one?
Yeah, get the last word.
Done?
Go ahead.
I have a change.org petition where we have 100,000 signatures. And right now we are looking for people who would like to volunteer to deliver it to their congressman. So if you would like to deliver the petition to your congressman, please contact me on Twitter. It's ESHA Legal.
ESHA Legal. Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have tagged you in it. So I'll tweet that out along with your handle and Salam's handle, and we want you guys to get involved. We want everyone rather to get involved as much as you possibly can. Isha, thanks so much for joining me and bringing us up to speed on that.
And thank you for having me. Have a great evening.
You too.